Okay, look right here, John. My first question is, who are you, where do you live?
I'm John Kirkpatrick Thompson, and I live at 206 Caroline Street, Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about this rescue squad. What could you tell me about this rescue squad for somebody who's never even heard of it? What would you say about it?
Well, being a native of Fredericksburg and being born in 1936, I think the squad was founded in about 1940 or 41. So, and my father being a charter member, I remember the earliest recollections, I remember the Green Hornet that was parked behind the fire station at that time on Princess Anne Street. And I think it was a LaSalle. Very impressive, because I think that was bought following the truck that was donated by the Sunshine Laundry. But for a kid growing up, family in the funeral business, and the Buick, not the Buick, but the Chevrolet dealership was catty-cornered from you. And there was also one or two other car dealerships on Princess Anne Street. You're very fascinated with the vehicles, especially the Green Hornet, because it was an ambulance with the color green, and being a kid that used to listen to Green Hornet on the radio, it certainly piqued my interest. And also along that period, the bell at the courthouse would sound off when there was a fire. I'm not sure it had a code for the squad, other than later I think it sounded 3 times when there was an emergency and they need squad assistance. But there was a code that the bell would send out, because the city was divided in sections, and each section had a number. And the reason I know this is because my grandfather operated the funeral home. At advertisement, he had a little personal card with his name on one side, Wheeler and Thompson Funeral Home, and the back side was a list of all the codes. And we lived in Marie Street, and you could hear that bell go off, and you knew something was not right. Ominous sign of danger, whatever. So that stood in my mind forever. But through the years, I remember when the squad raised the money and built this building. My father being a captain at one point, and he used to attend a lot of the squad conventions, particularly Virginia Beach, Roanoke. Not that he would drag us along, but we were aware they went to such events. I think later years, some of the banquets that were held, we were asked to attend. But they had a great fraternity of young men who gave up their time. Most of them were merchants or just employed at FMC, or just regular guys. Now there's so many professionals in the area, doctors and lawyers, the hospital being one of the largest employers in the area. But back then it was a small community. You knew everybody. You walked down the street, and you could probably name all the merchants who operated the various stores. So. But the squad, we could see it being in its infancy and then expand in terms of vehicles, the number of men. It was just a great addition to the community, because I think they were one of the first in the state. And then later years, when I got to high school, Bill Billingsley and Fred Bays were members of the squad. They attended one of our Key Club meetings. Key Club was founded under the auspices of the Kiwanis Club, and some of those members of the squad were members of Kiwanis. Anyway, they came and proposed to the Key Clubbers to form a junior Fredericksburg Junior Rescue Squad. I remember attending training sessions at the home of Dr. A.J. Bowling, Andrew Jackson Bowling. His son, Jack, was 2 years ahead of me. I graduated in 1955. Jack graduated in 1953. And we took the first aid courses conducted by Fred Bays and Billingsley. Then, a year or so after that, the junior squad was asked to maintain the first aid clinic at James Monroe High School. And I have, in my album, there was a page called the Junior Rescue Squad, and it lists a picture of the various members. And I happened to be captain that senior year. But it was, I think, the first in the state. I don't know if any other high schools followed what we did in Fredericksburg, but we were there to give out Band-Aids, aspirin, or whatever. I don't think we had really any serious situation arise. Main thing was to keep these young men under control and not to get up in the rafters and go through the air conditioning vents. It's amazing when you got young men are in a classroom and the doors closed, what they can get themselves into, what they think they can get themselves into. So anyway, it was a good service, and we had meetings. I remember in an old building behind the rescue squad, adjacent to the old jail. That building was since torn down, but I think it was a magistrate's office or something. I know they had a big desk, and I would conduct meetings of the squad there, junior squad.
Was it, so was that your first foray into becoming a member with the juniors? Did you eventually become a?
Yeah, I was one of the original members, and that continued until I graduated. So I would be starting in my sophomore year, about 1953 and 52, 53, and then I graduated in 1955.
Did you become a member of the not junior?
No, I went to college and Georgia Tech, and then worked for a public accounting firm in Richmond. I worked in Durham for a number of years, and my wife and I came back to Fredericksburg in 1970 and became the first controller of Washington Hospital. And that was like a 6-day job, and I didn't really have time to join in any other clubs or anything for a number of years. But my father was a member, and for all his life until he gets in the age group where you can become inactive.
What do you remember your dad telling you about, starting it up? It must have been something that was needed in this community.
Well, he didn't. I don't remember him speaking about the need or anything. I wish I had. Since then, I've read over the minutes of the meeting. Some of them, it was. I don't know how it got. It must have been started someplace else in the country, and they got wind of it and developed it.
What do you think it has meant to this community over the past how many years?
It's immeasurable, but I know with the fund drives and knowing about the calls through my father and being in community, you walk down the street and then all of a sudden there's a squad car going out on a call. I remember coming upon the scenes of many accidents. The squad participated. It certainly felt it provided a need, relief for a lot of the emergencies that occurred in the areas, not just car accidents, but people with respiratory problems. Prior to that, my grandfather, operating the funeral home, had a white Packard. He had two black Packard hearses, a 41s with the wheel covers on the side. I thought it was real neat. And the family car, which is also 41 Packard. But he also had a 41 Packard white in color. And I remember my father bringing my mother and my younger sister home from the hospital. In those days, it came by ambulance, but I guess there's some people who went by car, but I remember we lived on Marie Street, and they brought the stretcher in my mother and my younger sister. And I also remember the story about Dick Ross, who later became established Flowers by Ross. He attended James Monroe High School here, and he worked for my grandfather in the funeral business on a part-time job after school. And one icy winter day, my father was driving the white ambulance north on Route 1 and up by Wayside. They crossed some ice on the road, and the ambulance ended up flipping, turning over. Dick Ross was carrying this baby, and the mother was on a stretcher. Nothing happened to her, but he had bruised knees by the time they got him out. And the guy the baby was carrying, I forget his name, but he just died here last year, and he worked for a mortgage bank. That just made him, a small town, you knew everybody, and that always struck in mind throughout my entire life, and it would come up now and then. That white ambulance was sold, I think, or given to Hildreps, and they operated for a while. And about that, even that time overlaps the establishment of the squad. So at times I think the funeral home just took some people home from the hospital, that type of service, when in fact the rescue squad handled all the emergencies. Fredericksburg was small in those days, and you didn't have a lot of calls. I'm not sure why my grandfather got into that ambulance business, but must have been somebody asking for help along those lines, having the transportation. I don't think they would want to be transported to the hospital in a hearse.
Have you maintained a close connection with the rescue squad over the years? I know you left, you moved away, and all that stuff. I mean, is there that connection that you still have?
Not so much with the squad, other than through my father, but the members of the squad, Bill Billingsley, Fred Bays, you would see them from time to time, and other members of the squad. We have Dick Wright, who is a member of the Fredericksburg Rescue Squad Foundation, and he was a member of the squad probably back in high school before he got out. But I know afterwards he was very active. He's since moved to Richmond, but again, being a small community, seeing familiar faces on the drive, trying to collect coins and dollars down on Caroline Street.
How did you become an honorary life member?
I retired in 2001, and shortly thereafter, I get this call from Steve Ennis, who wanted me to join the foundation. And Steve and I go back to when both of us were employed by Mary Washington Hospital. Steve was in charge of security and safety. I was the controller, and I was also a member of the finance committee and the investment committee. So Steve knew I had that experience, and the foundation, I guess, felt like needed, besides Kevin Jones, who is a lawyer and brings legal expertise to the foundation. I bring accounting and finance and investing, and we're the two non-squad members, so that's why I'm here.
I mean, is it something that you take pride in to be connected to it in some way?
Oh, yes. I look around and there's a lot of need for various things in terms of charity, giving time for like Micah, homeless, things like that. And I feel like I'm giving back to the community through volunteering my financial accounting experience to various foundations. I'm also treasurer and secretary of another foundation besides being treasurer of the Fredericksburg Rescue Squad Foundation. And other than those three, it's keeps you pretty busy.
I mean, obviously, this group helps the community in immeasurable ways, but it's almost got to be a two-way street, too. So the community has to support it as well. So can you talk a little bit about how the community responds to this and helps support it through fundraising, things like that?
Well, most of the funds that we have in the foundation were given to the squad before the foundation was established. And then about the time I joined, or prior to that I joined, the squad inherited several parcels of land. And that led to the size of the trust now that's under investment. Since then, I think the receipts that come in go directly to the squad. So we don't receive much in the way of donations. We're just trying to manage the trust as we have it, and it's grown through working with a local investment company that actually does the day-to-day managing. We are the overseers. We have a fiduciary responsibility that it's conducted wisely and everything's accountable. So we perform those functions.
When you think back to when you were a kid, because I'm assuming way back then, the Fredericksburg Rescue Squad was serving Spotsy, Stafford, King George, and all kinds of places. And these days, they don't have to do that so much unless there's a mutual aid situation, correct? So talk a little bit, it kind of blows my mind that there would be all of that real estate that this squad would have to cover. Can you talk a little bit about that, about just mind-blowing, really?
Well, they used to, the calls, well, Steve will tell you that, have decreased from, I guess there was a peak time prior to Spotsylvania and Stafford initiating their own squads. But I'm not sure I understand your question, other than I think I know where you're going. I see a need for education and maybe scholarships to entice more young people to join the squad, because it's very expensive now and time consuming. So in the past, it's mainly time consuming, but now Steve can address the requirements you have to meet. And it's become can be a financial burden. So I think the Squad Foundation can help serve the public area by awarding some scholarships. Also, education in terms of how school kids or even businesses need to be aware of the risk in those facilities, risk to kids, because they will get into areas more quickly than adults, but stairs, how they're constructed, doors, how they're open, whatever. I can see a need for continuing education to various businesses, schools, about safety, preventing risk and accidents from happening.
This from Steve. How much time have you put in during your time on the Rescue Squad Foundation?
Well, we don't have a lot of check writing, so the accounting bookkeeping part is not too time consuming. What has been consuming is getting into analysis of investments, or looking at maybe revisiting who we have as managing our funds. It takes a lot of preparation to formulate the questions, know what to ask, how to gauge competence, looking at track records, because the stock market has really changed year to year, day to day, and will. In my spare time, I spend a lot of time reading about economics and political activities, their impact on the stock market. And so I'll use a lot of that experience, knowledge in reviewing the performance of our investment managers. If you don't, things could happen and maybe get away from you. So every day I learn something different or new about investing, market, and economics. And that helps me in my position as treasurer and help overseeing the investments. Knowing what questions to ask, knowing where the investors or our fund managers put their funds, making sure we feel comfortable and we haven't overlooked anything, and keeping the manager's fees under control, that sort of thing.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about any memories you may have had from way back when?
It's just, I've never in the world guessed I'd be in this position today, considering what I was, where I was when I was 6, 8, or 9. I had great admiration for the members of the squad. They didn't go to school to get a PhD or a doctorate and this and that, but they just had an interest in preserving the security and safety of its local citizens. So they stood out in my mind as heroes in the community. My father, being in the funeral business, was used to getting calls in the middle of the night, the phone ringing. And so I know what those guys have to put up with. Though I haven't felt it physically, I understand the sacrifices they make.
Anything else, guys?
What did he do as a living?
Hmm?
What did he do as his job that gave him why we came looking for him?
Oh, okay. Well, can
Well, I said
yeah,
that.
You did, yeah, he did,
Yeah.
you did touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, you were having coffee
Yeah,
in the
you
kitchen.
I recall that very loud conversation. Is there anything else other than that, Steve?
I can think of
Anything else you want to add?
I think the challenge, I talked about education. We're aware of a lot of the volunteers are being replaced by paid members. And so the question comes up, what's going to happen to the volunteers? And then what's going to happen to Fredericksburg Rescue Squad Foundation? That's paramount in my mind, and we've discussed it many times. That's why we're here today. One thing is to preserve the legacy. But financially, we have to give so much money to the squad, and that's no problem. That's what why we're here, why we exist. But down the road, what is the squad going to become as this trend toward paid service people by the city? That's what we need to be thinking about. And the only thing I can think of is providing more education to prevent the occurrences of why you need emergency services.
Good to me. All right,
All right?
thank you, sir, appreciate it.